Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Antarctic Flights webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. It gives me great pleasure to present this product to you. You can hear the excitement in my voice, and that's because this product is super exciting. Antarctica is by far the world's most unique scenic flight. No one else does it. There's nothing else like it in the world. And it is the greatest way to see Antarctica. I've got a wonderful presentation set up by our marketing team to really showcase this fabulous product to you. But also, this is an opportunity for us to answer your questions that you may have about the product itself. Let's start off with a wonderful little video.
Antarctica in a day on the world's most unique scenic flight. Witness the world's last great wilderness on board a Qantas 787 Dreamliner. Departing from most capital cities, join a flight unlike any other. Seats will sell quickly. Be sure to book yours today.
Fantastic. And we're just going to pop over a couple of great images and head straight into a little quiz for you, just to whet your appetite, folks. How big do you think Antarctica is compared to Australia? You can pop your answer in the chat or maybe just quietly say it to yourself. I'll give you just one more second before I tell you it is nearly twice as big as Australia. And you'll see later on that we only touch on a very, very small portion of it. Next question, how long does it take to reach Antarctica from Sydney? It's a long way. It seems like a long way. If you have a look at the world map, it's very, very low there. But those that put in 4 hours, you're absolutely correct. About 4 hours to reach the Antarctic continent from Sydney. And last but not least, let's give you one more. What is the average thickness or depth of the Antarctica ice sheets? Oh, that's a tough one. But I'm sure you wouldn't be surprised to know 2.2 kilometres. 2,200 meters. Like I said, this is a fascinating continent. It is really the last great wilderness, and what better way to explore it than on a day flight? Let's talk about the flights and what makes them so unique. So as I mentioned, we're the only company that do scenic flights over Antarctica on a regular basis. And as a matter of fact, we've been doing it for over 32 years. Now, I know later on we'll tell you that we've done over 150 flights. We've actually lost track of exactly how many flights we've done. But the best part for us is that we've taken over 40,000 people over the last great wilderness. And our flights aren't only about sightseeing. It's about educating the general public on how important the Antarctica continent is and what we need to do to preserve it for many generations to come. And that whole educational piece is also part of our flights. So how does it work? Well, we have 7 flights this season. And when we talk about a season stretches from November through to February. They're the summer months over Antarctica. That gives us the ideal flying conditions to see the continent. Plus, it's 24 hours daylight, so we don't need to worry about that. And that's really important when I start talking about our wonderful New Year's Eve flight. We travel aboard the Qantas Dreamliner 787 aircraft. Perfect aircraft for sightseeing. Right up until COVID, and we shouldn't even mention that word anymore, we used to use the Qantas 747 aircraft, the wonderful queen of the skies. And we thought there's nothing that will ever be able to replace her, but the Dreamliner came along and has made it an even more incredible experience. Larger windows, more room, less guests. It's just the optimal aircraft for sightseeing. Now, our flights do depart from Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne and Perth. We do have guests also asking about Adelaide and Tasmania, Hobart in particular. There have been some restrictions with regard to Qantas operating Dreamliner aircraft from those cities, but we continually ask season on season whether those cities can be included. So stay tuned, maybe a few years away, but we will certainly try and get more active out of cities as they come available to the Dreamliner network. The total flight duration is anywhere between 12 and 14 hours, so it is a full day. But folks, Please don't think of it as a 12 or 14-hour flight as you would experience if you were traveling to the Middle East or over to the States. This is like no other flight that you've ever been on, and everyone that does the experience can't believe how quickly it passes by. It is considered a domestic flight, so we leave from the domestic terminal at all the ports that we leave from, and that's highly important because guess what? We don't need you at the airport until 1 hour prior to departure. It's usually an early start, an 8 a.m. or a 9 a.m. flight. We just ask you to be there an hour prior to departure, and we'll touch on that a little bit more later. And of course, we have our seat swap system. So halfway through the experience, we go through a little bit of a seat swap so that everyone gets that equal experience of sitting next to the window or the seat next to the window seat itself. And again, I will touch on that in more detail in just a few moments. There's our flights for this season, folks. You can see 2 flights out of Sydney, 2 flights out of Melbourne, 2 flights out of Brisbane, and Australia Day out of Perth. Out of Melbourne, we've got our traditional New Year's Eve flight, which leaves at about 5 p.m. on New Year's Eve. And we've got a little bit of a video on what we do on the New Year's Eve flight. So if you really want a unique way to see in the new year, folks, our New Year's Eve flight from Melbourne is incredibly popular. We've been doing it for many years. As I touched on before, it's 24 hours daylight over Antarctica. So you'll do all your sightseeing, but of course we will celebrate and bring in the new year at midnight. And you can imagine the celebrations that we have on board. It's a wonderful, wonderful celebrative flight to be on. But at the same time, expect to be educated and still see those great sights of Antarctica. Is it just ice and snow? Well, folks, it isn't. And I'm going to say this to you now, that it doesn't matter the videos I show you or the photos I show you. They simply don't do justice to what you will see with the naked eye. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not looking down at Antarctica when we're over the continent. You're looking out at Antarctica, and it is everywhere as far as the eye can see. And don't think you need expensive photography equipment to get the best photos. We run a competition every year, and believe it or not, in the last couple of years, we've had people with iPhones taking great shots and winning the competition. And here's some photos just taken with the phones from our staff. Look at these wonderful images. Transantarctica mountains, beautiful glaciers. We have there on your left, Erebus with a little bit of smoke coming out. That's right, active volcano on Antarctica, smoke coming out. Unbelievable. And ladies and gentlemen, it is an optical illusion. We fly at 10,000 feet. People say, how low do you fly? Well, we fly at 10,000 feet is the lowest we go. But for those that drove cars before the year 2000, 2010, you may remember on your side mirror, it used to say objects appear closer than they are. You get that same optical illusion looking out of an aircraft window at Antarctica. So you saw that wonderful photo of Erebus, and I'll go back to it. There it is on the left-hand side. There's times we've flown over Erebus, and it almost felt like you could reach out and touch it. That's how grand it actually is. And just a reminder, these photos, as I said, are taken with an iPhone. So it is absolutely spectacular. A photographer's dream as well, don't get me wrong. We've actually had photo groups on board. We've had Canon launch cameras on the aircraft just to showcase what these wonderful cameras can do. But when you've got the sights that you'll see on this flight, you'll understand why they test cameras up on our flights. Beautiful. Look at those photos. Fantastic. All right, so what can you expect? As I said, it's not like any other flight you've been on. You'll get to the airport 1 hour prior to departure. You won't go to the check-in area. You won't go to the kiosks. You'll go straight through security and go to the departure gate. Our team, wearing these wonderful polos, will be there waiting for you. And they'll give you 2 boarding passes. That's right, 2 boarding passes, because you'll have a boarding pass for your trip from Australia to Antarctica, and you'll have a boarding pass for Antarctica back to Australia. And that comes into effect when we go through our seat swap. Straight to the departure gate. As I said, domestic terminal. 7, 8 a.m. departure, daytime flight, you're back 7, 8 p.m. in the evening. How wonderful. People ask, what did you do on the weekend? I just popped down to Antarctica and I'm back. Great daytime flight. As we saw in our little quiz at the start, about 4 hours flying time to get down to Antarctica. Really important. Brisbane takes a little bit longer, can be a little bit quicker from Melbourne, but it also depends on the flight route that we take. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. You will board the aircraft and there'll be a sense of excitement because everyone is anticipating a wonderful day of sightseeing over Antarctica. No fighting for overhead locker space. Don't need to worry about it. What you're doing is actually introducing yourself to those sitting around you because you're going to enjoy this spectacle with these people. We're on board an absolutely beautiful Qantas Dreamliner aircraft. We get the full international service that Qantas provides on their international services on this aircraft. So drinks are flowing. You'll have a lovely brunch on a daytime flight, followed by a wonderful dinner on the way home. As I said, drinks are included. We even get the ice creams out while you're over the ice. Again, it's a full service aircraft. Everything is included. And as I said, it's also an educational experience. So we will provide live commentary once we're over the Antarctica continent. And some of the Antarctica experts we use are the absolute leaders in their field. Diana Patterson being the first female station manager anywhere on Antarctica. Ian Allison, one of the world's leading glaciologists. These are the kind of people that will be in the cockpit when we're over the ice, explaining exactly what you'll see. And I've got a short grab in just a minute that will show you exactly what it's like when you're on the aircraft. But even on the way to Antarctica, once we take off, you will be educated by our friends from the Antarctic Science Foundation. You'll be educated about the Mawson's Huts Foundation and what they offer. And you'll also be educated by our experts who will talk about when they were in Antarctica, because our experts, most of them have at least wintered once or twice down in Antarctica, and they'll tell you all about that experience. Again, it's building your anticipation to this last great wilderness that will appear in front of you after about 3.5 to 4 hours. But it's very much an educational piece. For those that don't want to take all that in, don't forget you've got your wonderful in-flight entertainment system that you get throughout your international flights with Qantas. So you can take in your latest movie. You can even watch Happy Feet. We always love to make sure that's on our Antarctica flights. But we also have a number of documentaries about Antarctica that we've also got in the in-flight entertainment system. For those that don't necessarily want to listen to the PA system, pop in and have a look at one of these wonderful documentaries. Let's have a listen to what it's like when we hear it.
At one point in your life, you must meet Antarctica, and we are here. Doors are open. Viewing is good. We've just crossed the coast, the Pennell coast, and immediately in front of the aircraft and both sides, we're going to have fantastic viewing of the Admiralty Ranges, mentioned before, named after James Clark Ross. But what is awesome about this part of Antarctica is the mosaic of mountains, mountain ranges, and all sorts of glaciers, from Piedmont glaciers to very well-channeled outlet glaciers, deep trench glaciers, and we're going to see all of that today in a very, very brief time.
So that's just a little excerpt there from the video or DVD or USB that is created by a cameraman that we have on board. He has 4 fixed cameras and a roaming camera, and that's also available to guests at a small charge of your very flight, so that you can show your friends how wonderful it actually was. Now, as I said to you, you may be looking at those shots and listening to that bit of commentary thinking, gee, that looks great. It is nothing compared to what the naked eye seas. I have to keep reminding you of that because it is mind-blowing. As a matter of fact, I have had the privilege of being on countless flights. I think I'm around about the 50 flight mark. And when we hit the Antarctica continent, or when we come down to it, the amount of tears I see on people is heartwarming. That we're delivering such a great spectacle. It brings people to tears. They cannot believe the enormity of it and how spectacular it actually is. So as I said, we have commentary throughout when we're over the ice. It's education. It's about educating you on how and why we must protect this last great wilderness and leave it as we see it today for generations to come. And hopefully we can be part of that by still doing these flights. We're the only company in the world that does it. There could be an opportunity out of South America. There could be an opportunity out of South Africa. No one takes it. We're the only ones that do it. And we love doing it because it gives people that rare opportunity. All our flights are carbon offset, making them carbon neutral. So we do that to give back. But I can't stress enough, it is an educational piece as much as it is a sightseeing flight. Okay, we talked about Antarctica being nearly twice the size of Australia. Well, there's Antarctica in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll see the little red box. That's our preferred flying area. And to give you an idea, this is one of our flight paths that we fly. We have 19 different flight paths to choose from. Now, why do we have 19 different flight paths? If it's raining in Adelaide, we go towards Sydney if we're leaving from Melbourne. Do you understand my gist? We find the clearest flight path for the flight that you're travelling on. The Qantas captains work tirelessly with Bureau of Meteorology and they start looking at the weather patterns up to 2 weeks prior to the flight. 2 days, even 1 day prior to the flight, they will then fix the flight path that we're traveling on, ensuring that we have the clearest sightseeing that we can possibly have. This is one of my favorite flight paths. It's a wonderful coastal flight path. It takes in one of the bases, but the turnaround point around Mount Erebus is just absolutely wonderful. What we have in that small pocket that you can see there, which is only a very, very small portion of Antarctica, is a great coastline. Transantarctic mountains. So you see those wonderful mountain ranges, some of the most recognized glaciers on Antarctica, and of course, Erebus. And it's an absolute delight to be able to fly over that. Okay, so what planning is involved? I told you the 19 different flight paths. I haven't told you yet, but the captains that operate these flights, they go through special training and have so for the last 30 years. And it gets handed on from captain to captain. So each captain must fly in the right-hand seat, so as a co-pilot, at least 3 times prior to be able to take control of the flight in the left-hand captain's seat. It is a special art form. It's actually something captains love to do. You can imagine they're never doing figure eights over points of interest or anything like that when they're traveling commercially. So it's a real treat for them as well, but they do have to be certified to actually fly these flights. I've told you about the weather, and we try and avoid any bad weather so that we get the best spectacular sightseeing that we can possibly do. Okay, most questions are always around the seating available on the aircraft. I'm going to try and make it as easy as possible and explain it the best I can. By all means, don't forget, jump on the website. It's very, very interactive. It will give you all the information. And if I haven't answered your question properly, by all means, we've got a wonderful team. They've all experienced the flights and they can talk you through it as well. But the aircraft, as you see it there, it's a multicolored aircraft, and that's because they're the different seat sections. Unfortunately, throughout our next season, the business class deluxe cabin has sold out. Now, those fixated with traveling in business deluxe, please register for next season then, because we have that many people register that business class deluxe sells out very, very quickly years in advance. And likewise, our Explorer economy class, which is our leading class, those seats don't actually have direct access to a window. But I take you back to my comment I made before. You never look down at Antarctica when you're on an Antarctica flight. You look out at it. It is everywhere. So you can comfortably stand in the aisles and see the whole spectacle in front of you. So no one's ever disappointed. But let's talk about the seating classes that we do have available for this season. We start with our business class. Now, the business class is slightly different to business class deluxe because you can see it's more towards the middle of the aircraft. So it's on the leading edge of the wing. Not that the wing plays a great deal in your sightseeing. And we'll discuss that a little bit more next in premium. But beautiful business class product, as you would get internationally. You get your fine dining, drinks, French champagne, and you really just enjoy the spectacle. And I say it again, those in business class will have access to the business class cabin. Premium and economy class guests don't get access to the business class cabin. So you do get that cabin, or almost, look at it, half the aircraft to yourselves. And that's the benefit of paying business class. Now, the seat swap, very simple. Person starts and flies from Australia to Antarctica. If they start in seat A, so let's call it 14A. Once we call the seat swap, now I'll make it very clear that the seat swap is calculated by the captain, and the captain will, once we reach the Antarctica continent, know exactly the time he will be leaving the Antarctica continent. And it's at exactly that halfway point that we do our seat change. So everyone gets an equal period of time over Antarctica for the sightseeing, either in a window seat or the seat next to a window seat and an aisle seat. So as you can see, the seat swap is so simple in this section, A to E and E to A. Now, yes, there is an aisle in between, and I love it when I see couples holding hands. Just be careful of that Qantas trolley coming through, but you can still hold hands and really enjoy the spectacle. Let's have a look at premium economy. Premium is a little bit difficult because you have 3 seats in the middle and 2 seats either side. It does work for us because we do our seating swap using solo passengers. So if we have couples and solos, we mix it up. But effectively, you'll see this right throughout the economy class section. A and B swap with C and D, or in this case, A and B swap with D and E, and probably don't look at F swapping with K and so on, because as I said, with premium, that small cabin, we have to use our solo travelers to do the seat swap. Premium cabin. A lot of people ask me, why would I pay extra for the premium cabin? It's right over the wing. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll say it again. You're looking out in Antarctica, not down in Antarctica. Figure eights. The captains love doing figure eights over points of interest. They'll be banking the aircraft left and right. You won't actually feel it in your seat, or even if you're standing in the aisles. But the wing doesn't really come into play that much. The one thing I will say, if you are an avid photographer and you don't want any wings in your shot, then the premium cabin's not probably for you. But everyone else, extra leg room, an elevated sense of dining and beverages, and again, you have that premium cabin to yourselves. So you and 28 guests have that entire cabin to move around in, which is quite luxe. Let's have a look at one of our guests that actually produced a small video
to Antarctica with the guys from Antarctica Flights that invited me on board. So I'm really looking forward to this day. Come along for the ride. We'll see what it's like. I don't really know what to expect, but it should be pretty cool.
Very close to Antarctica, but there's some early signs for you.
Ever time there's a 787 Dreamliner that's flying over Antarctica, and we're the first people on it, and that means you get 27% bigger windows on this plane. I just made that stat up. I don't know if it's 27%. I know it's a lot more.
And you can see the wonderful images there. So you can see that the wing, you will see it occasionally, but in so many cases, it's very much either the aircraft is banking or doing figure eights very much clear of the wing. I will pick him up on one point, and that was early on in COVID. We noticed we even operated, we had to wear the masks, but that's when we started using the Dreamliner for the very first time. And he mentions 27% bigger windows. I can assure you they're much bigger than 27% bigger than the 747 windows. They are large and lovely and perfect for sightseeing. So premium economy, a very, very good choice if you want that extra level of comfort, and also a cabin that you can maneuver around in quite easily because you're just sharing with 28 guests. Superior economy. So this is our highest ranking economy class grade seat. And why? Because it is totally clear of the wing. So you're sitting behind the wing, great sightseeing from the back of the aircraft. And as you can see there, A and B swap with C and D. So if you're traveling as a couple, you'll sit in A and B from Australia down to Antarctica, and then move into the two aisle seats, C and D, for Antarctica back to Australia. The question comes about is, what if I'm a solo traveller? Well, we do our very best to give all our solo travellers a window. But unfortunately, with the aircraft the way it is, that's impossible to guarantee. So we say that everyone will get a seat, a window seat, or the seat next to the window seat for half the flight, and an aisle seat for the other half. Again, even if you're in the B seat, the windows are that big, you will enjoy the spectacle just as much as sitting in the window seat. And I go back to everyone getting on board, having that same sense of anticipation. And once we're over the ice, people are up and about because we encourage them to get up and about, stretch the legs, stand in the aisles, watch the scenery go by. There is no threat of turbulence. Turbulence is caused by hot air rising from the ground. Unlikely to happen over Antarctica. We encourage people to get up and get about. And it's so lovely to see people jump into my seat for 5 minutes and take some photos. And that's what you get. But seat exchange, pretty simple, A to B and C to D. Away from the wing, superior economy. Standard economy is over the wing. So you're right at the front of that economy class cabin. Of course, you're more than welcome to get up and walk right towards the back if you wish. Everyone in Superior, Explorer and Standard Economy share that whole space. And as I keep saying, get up, move around, common windows to choose from, but simply standing in the aisles, you will see so much. Seat rotation, exactly the same as Superior Economy. So how do you secure your seat? Well, you can book online. It's as simple as that. Or you can call our wonderful team who are ready to take your calls and secure that seat for you. We're very flexible. We understand that things happen. People get ill. You can actually take travel insurance to cover the cost of these flights if you wish. And if you're booking in business class, or as a matter of fact, any class, you may want to consider that as things do happen and you can cover yourself. But we're very flexible. If you can't make it, but you want to send a family member or something like that instead, we'll certainly make that available to you. Now, I've also been told that we've got 10 copies of this wonderful book, which is called The Ice Beneath My Feet, and it is written by Diana Patterson, who was that first female station manager at any station in Antarctica. It's a wonderful read. It's about her time on the ice, but in particular, her time with her dogs on the ice as well. Incredible book, well worth reading. First 10 people to book, get a copy of the book. So we'll monitor that not only online, but you can certainly call in to our office as well. We've had some questions sent to us prior to this webinar starting, so I'll just touch on a few of those. If you have any questions, pop them in now and I'll quickly try and answer them in the next 2 or 3 minutes. But can I reserve a particular seat? You can certainly request that, but we do our seating allocation based on booking order, and we don't do the seating allocation until about a week prior to the flight. We don't disclose the seats to people prior. That will be given to you at the airport on your boarding passes. But can I just point out, there is no bad seat on the aircraft. irrespective of what seat you sit in, you're going to see the most beautiful spectacle you've ever seen. So don't be too concerned about that. But if there is a particular seat, and especially for those that might be incredibly tall, we do want to make you as comfortable as possible. Let us know and we'll try and accommodate any special seating requirements. People ask about special meals. Folks, this is an international Qantas flight, or we treat it as an international Qantas flight. So please, if you have any special meal requirements that you would normally ask for from Qantas when flying internationally, let us know. We facilitate that for you. So that's all taken care of. Do you get frequent flyer points on this flight? Unfortunately not, and there's no way of paying for the flight using points. We charter the Qantas aircraft and the crew, so we're not able to facilitate that. But those that are Qantas Club members and those that do travel in business class, you do have access to the lounge prior to the flight. But we ask you just to come to the gate first, pick up your boarding passes, and then go back to the lounge until we board. Will I see any wildlife? Well, you saw actually in the document, the video from the gentleman from Premium Economy class, you saw that penguin at the airport. That's about as good as it gets. And you might see a few of these furry little men on the flight, which we make available for purchase. But folks, you don't see any wildlife, not when you're flying as low as 10,000 feet. We do see areas that may have had penguin colonies, but even if there are recognised penguin colonies on our flight path, we try and avoid it. We just want to leave them at peace. So unfortunately, no wildlife. Will I need a passport? No, you won't. We just ask you to bring a form of photo identification, and that way we know we've got the right people on board. Let's have a look. Can I quickly touch on Business Deluxe? Okay, Business Deluxe, folks, is right at the front of the aircraft, okay, away from the wing. It is exactly the same as business class as far as the seating is concerned and the actual setup of the seats. But the only difference is that you're free of the wing. Great viewing out of all the business class seats, be it business class or business class deluxe, because if you have a look at an aircraft map of the 787, you'll see that each seat almost has 2 to 3 windows accessible to it. So even if you are traveling as a couple and you find that, you as an individual, you're sitting in the A seat, though the person traveling with you, rather than stay in the seat in E, can quite comfortably share that space with you because there is so much room between the seat and the seat in front of you to enjoy that spectacle. So business class deluxe is very much the premium cabin. Explorer economy, and I know it's our leading class. As I said, Explorer economy does not have direct access to a window. So you'll find that the exit rows, and there are a couple of rows in economy class where there is actually no window. There's seats there, but there's no window. So those in Explorer economy, you really will need to get up and stand in the aisles or use some of the common windows. And as I said, as long as you can stand up, you're going to really enjoy that spectacle. And you'll find that a lot of people do get up and move around. Even if they have purchased superior economy, you'll find those people getting up and moving around because often we'll see a point of interest on the right-hand side of the aircraft, and especially at the start of the flight, you'll find everyone moving over to the right-hand side, to the point where I often think, wow, I'm surprised the flight isn't sort of bulging over. But that settles down after a while. But as long as you can get up and move around, it absolutely is fine. The video. A quick question about the video. That's made, I think it is roughly about $85, and it will be posted to you. It's done by Sky Videos. As a matter of fact, the gentleman that makes those USBs, DVDs, it's his 100th flight, the first flight of this season. So if you think I've had the privilege of nearly doing 50, he's doing his 100th flight, folks, 100th flight. So he's got it down pat. Everyone loves the USB, the DVD. Medical assistance on board. This is like any other Qantas international flight. The crew are all trained in first aid, and it would be assistance provided like on any other flight. We have had a couple of occasions where there has been a call, and believe it or not, in most cases, we do have a doctor on board as one of the passengers. So there is that first aid assistance as you would get on an international flight. And if we have a doctor on board, hopefully we're never in that position to have to do anything like that. But yes, we would certainly take care of people that way. Folks, that's all the questions that have come through. I hope that I've answered some of those niggling questions you may have had. But let me just reiterate how easy this product is as far as traveling on an Antarctica flight. Be at the airport 1 hour prior to departure. That's all we ask of you. Walk straight through security, obviously be scanned. Don't walk straight through. Straight to the departure gate where you'll pick up your 2 boarding passes. You'll board the aircraft and board so quickly because no one's fighting over overhead locker space, armrests, all that kind of thing. There's plenty of room on these Dreamliners. We take off and we give you the best spectacle that you're ever likely to have for the next 12 hours. As I said from the start, don't think of it as a 12 or 14 hour flight as you would if you were traveling to the Middle East or the United States. This experience will go by quicker than you can imagine. Qantas do a fabulous job. We have been doing this for 32 years and we love doing it. We can't wait to have you on board one of our Antarctica flights. I thank you for your time. Again, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok. Any more questions, don't hesitate to call our team. The first 10 people to book, and we may already be there, opportunity to get this great book as well from Diana Patterson. And please, come and join us next season and really experience the last great wilderness. Thank you for your time.